It was my first win in Europe. I've been improving and training and racing hard here for 4 years now and noticing the improvement every year, getting closer and closer. And to finally be able to finish enough, having everything line up properly was like very nice.
Welcome to the Canadian Cycling Magazine podcast. I'm Matthew Piero. You just heard from Pier-André Côté. He was speaking about an important win at the Grand Prix Criquelion, which ran last month. Côté races for human-powered health. He's now in his fourth year with the pro team, which is based in the US. Its race schedule has been bringing Côté to Europe pretty consistently since 2019. Côté is from Gaspé, and he grew up in Lévis near Quebec City. His current home is Girona, which makes for a solid European base. In this episode, Côté and I discuss connections between hockey and cycling and the nature of risk in bike racing. He knows a thing or two about financial risk. He's studying to be an actuary. He definitely has a numerical, analytical mind. Yet he balances that with a certain wisdom that goes beyond number crunching. I really appreciated his discussion about power meters and his relationship with them and his training. He has some insights that many of us who are training with power should think about. But first, we start with Criquelion. That name might be familiar to you if you know your Canadian cycling history going back to 1988. Côté and I don't discuss that other Criquelion Canada connection, but I'll tell you more at the end of the episode. Now, here's my chat with Pier-André Côté. Pier-André Côté, recently you won the Grand Prix Criquelion. It is a one-day stage race in Belgium. What did you know about that race beforehand?
I guess we didn't know much about it. We were actually informed by Andrick, our new director this year, with a ton of experience in Belgium, that it was named after Claude Criquelion, a really successful bike racer in Belgium.
And what did you know of the course before getting there?
It was a very interesting course, actually. A little bit like a kermesse, just 13 or 15, around 15K laps, I think, maybe 20. But pretty short laps that you do a few times. I think it was 9 laps, with some tiny roads, with some climbs, a little bit of cobbles, a little bit for everyone, basically, a little bit of fun for any type of rider. So suggesting a very open race with only us as a Pro Conti team in there. So probably not a controlled race. So we were all pretty excited to go racing, actually.
And was this a target for you? Did you mark that one on your calendar, or did you just show up open to race?
The latter, yeah. we showed up pretty open to race. It's great to mix in some point twos in our calendar with the point ones and point pros. It's great to just go back to being the team under pressure and feel like you're controlling the race, Because let's be honest, when we're doing races like Kern-Brussels-Kern, it's more like trying to be opportunistic and punch above your weight and not really be the team that will be under pressure and try to control the race, right? So it kind of got me back to my roots of racing in Quebec, in Tour de Beauce, Saguenay, trying to figure out how to win the race from the front and really be aggressive. And also deal with the pressure of being the team that everyone's watching. So it was quite refreshing, actually.
Was there any time during the race where you felt, maybe you or the team felt that, maybe things aren't looking good or we aren't controlling as well as we should?
Honestly, it went very well. So the original plan was to basically be in every single group that went up the road. We were on a reduced quad because a bunch of guys are sick, and then we had some guys crash in the previous races. So it was only 5 of us. One of the guys, Gage Etch, was sick, but did an amazing job too. So with only 4.5 guys to start with, let's be honest, we really didn't want to be in a position that we had to ride. So the best way to not be in that position was to basically be in every single move that went up the road. But when you're the team that's going to be watched by everyone, then once human-powered health was in a breakaway, then everybody felt like that breakaway would go to the line. So everyone wanted to be in that breakaway. So it created a scenario where it took over 2 hours for the breakaway to go. But that was super nice. Like, honestly, there was literally not a single situation I think that we were not in control. The guy did an amazing job. We were protecting Zook, but Colin, August, Gage, and we just took turns and basically covered everything until my move went. Um, Somewhat serious move went just before mine with Colin and Gage. We were golden, like 2 guys out of 8, but then it got shut down a lap later. And then I went in a group of 6 and stayed there for a little while. And then, so like we were under control for that whole first part of the race.
So you mentioned Zook, Nicholas Zukowski. He's your teammate. He was the protected rider, but and he finished 4th. But what happened in the final shuffle there? Because I think both you and he were in that final move or close to that final move.
Yeah, exactly. So once I made it to the breakaway, it was not really like an early breakaway situation anymore because we were like halfway through the race. It was more like a race finish threatening kind of move. Just we went racing and we went hard. So we were never given more than 50 seconds to a minute. We just started racing basically for the finish earlier on. And I think with 2 laps to go, like 50K to go, a group of 20 bridged to us, which the guys followed, which was perfect. We had basically August, Nicola, and Colin in that group. Then we got out of this group with a group of 6, and we were 3 of us human powered out in that group with Zook and Colin. So we had 3 out of 6. Those were like perfect odds. And yeah, so since we had been protecting Zook, we knew we had the winning card in there for sure. Colin and I rode pretty hard. Zook obviously rode the breakaway as well. You can't just sit on. And then we eventually dropped another guy from the breakaway. So we went to 3 out of 5. Colin wasn't feeling perfect, so he did the most work in the breakaway, making sure that we won the battle against the peloton because we were pretty confident about our ability to beat the other guys in the breakaway. So at that point, it was more about staying away than figuring out how to beat the other guys from that move. And then it was a game just Zook and I basically attacking one after the other to try and crack the others in the breakaway. And I think he fell short a little bit at the end. The finish wasn't like perfectly suited to attack. Zook ended up attacking in like a false flat downhill. The guys could benefit from the draft a lot, right? From the nature of a false flat downhill, you can easily shelter. So yeah, Zook lacked a little bit of power there because, it's at the end of the race. And yeah, it was easy to follow on the false flat downhill. But then I think a guy from Minerva attacked maybe a K from the line. And then Zook did a perfect job just keeping me within striking distance. He trusted my sprint, and then I just had to finish it off, and that was it.
You've won races before. You've won stages of the Grand Prix Cycliste de Saguenay, as well as Beauce, and the National Criterium Championship race in 2017. You did mention that the style of racing here at the Grand Prix Criquelion reminded you a bit of racing in these North American events, especially on a team as strong as Human Powered Health. But what does this win or how does this win compare with your other wins that you've had at a pro level?
I think it's still a big step forward, to be honest. Firstly, because it's a one-day race. I've won a bunch of stages and stage races, but this one was like a one-day race. So you win the day, but you win the race, basically. And then it's in Europe. It was my first win in Europe. I've won, 5 times at a UCI level back in North America. But yeah, this one was very like the first one in Europe. I've been improving and training and racing hard here for 4 years now and noticing the improvement every year, getting closer and closer. And to finally be able to finish enough, having everything line up properly was like very nice.
Now, unfortunately, you got sick soon afterwards. Illness seems to be going through the ranks of the pro peloton this spring. It always seems riders seem a bit more susceptible to catching bugs because they tax their bodies in training and racing, which lowers their defenses against colds and flus and other illnesses. But tell me more about that challenge that you and your fellow riders face this spring.
Yeah, there does seems to be a little bit more problem with illnesses and injuries this year. I think it could be 2 factors. Like, I'm not a doctor, but I feel like a little bit of it could be because a bunch of us pro riders ended up getting COVID at some point, and maybe like the immune systems are a little bit on the back foot still from that. So you go back to racing because obviously you want to race your bike. You do all the protocol, 5-10 days off, but then maybe you're still a little tired. Your immune system is maybe a little vulnerable. And then I think the other element is that we've been wearing masks and using a lot of hand sanitizer and everything for the last 2 years, which is a great thing. But now that most measures and protection is going away, then maybe, our immune system, it's kind of a shock for us to go back to normal life and not having to face any virus in the last 2 years, basically. So I think that might be both elements that could, that could end up having a lot of riders sick this time.
You're one of only a few Canadian riders to go pro while still under 23. You joined Rally UHC Cycling for the 2019 season. You're still with that team, which is now called Human Powered Health. It's a UCI pro team. Your teammate, Nicholas Zukowski, who we've mentioned, went pro before the age of 23 as well. And Rafael Paracella is doing his first full season with B&B Hotels KTM. You three are all notable because it's pretty rare for Canadian riders to get to that level so early. In your case, what happened to get you to the pro continental level, or the pro team level as it's now known?
I think I had great teams taking care of me and giving me opportunities. And I also had good timing with how things ended up playing. So I think Silver Pro Cycling, which was a great program with Gord Fraser and Scott McFarlane, giving us a great platform to, one, develop ourselves and then get opportunities to perform. I was 2 years on the team. The first year was a lot about learning about myself and how to race in North America, the bigger races, Tour of Utah, Colorado. And then they really started trusting in myself. And then, I got a lot of chances in the sprint in the second year and ended up winning 2 stages of both. And that's how Rally at the time noticed me and decided to sign me my first pro contract 4 years ago. Basically, I'm on my 4th year with the team, now called Human Powered Health. So I think, getting these good rides with Silver Pro Cycling, getting the good opportunities, and just trusting us, and really taking the time to teach us how to race bikes really allowed me to be noticed by Rally and then make my way through this team. And now I've been racing in Europe for 4 years and getting better every year.
It's fortunate that Silver was around at that time in your development. I guess recently we now have the project Premier Tech U23, which was definitely for developing riders. How critical is that period for a rider in his or her development?
I think it's super critical. These are the years where you're allowed to learn. I feel like the younger you learn and you get the opportunities to learn, you're not going to be on the back foot for the next year. Racing in North America was great, but it took me a few years to adapt to the racing over here. I went from being pretty successful in the US to getting dropped most of the days here in Europe, to be honest. On the first year I was with the team here, and I was happy to get a 2-year contract because it gave me a little more time to learn. But to be honest, the race weren't easy the first 2 years, and only at the end of my second year did I start to be at the front of the bike races towards the end. And then the next year I started being more competitive and fighting for result. And this year now, I just want to race. I'm super happy. And I'm finally getting to that point where I feel like I'm in control and I can do work and try to seize my opportunities at the end of races. But like I said, the first 2 years, it's just a shock and you have to relearn so many new things that, having the opportunities these guys have, being U23 and being able to be exposed to that many races in Europe, I think it's going to be great for their development.
You mentioned how you've changed as a rider, especially going from the North American scene to the European scene. And you've done that all with Human Powered Health. How has the team changed in that time? I ask because this team has been around for a while. It's a solid outfit. In a world where cycling teams can come and go and fall apart, this one seems rock solid. But I'm sure you've seen it evolve as it has really solidified itself as a pro Conti team or a pro team.
Yeah, it's just a great program that's been going on for years, and it's just small steps, like keep improving in basically every areas of the sport, logistic, preparation, staff, directors, nutrition. Everything's been improving constantly over the last few years, and now we're really starting to notice changes and especially their effects on our results. Like we've had a lot of stage wins last year, and we're trying to keep up the momentum this year. But yeah, I mean, directors and riders all moving to Europe to be there most of the time. So that's like, I think, one of the biggest change, to be honest. The first few years we were traveling a lot, which in that moment felt great. It's easier, let's put it that way, to just be home more often. But then every time you do the travel over the Atlantic, well, you're going to lose 2 to 3 days of training on one end. Then you come back, it's another 2 3 days. So if every time you do the travel you lose a week of training, you do 4 or 5 of these during the racing season, then that's 5 weeks of training that you just missed. That's 10% of the year, right? So that's a lot. So I think that's been a huge improvement. And then just the staff, we've been like hiring new staff or keeping the ones that were very competent. So I think like we just built that family that's super reliable, and yeah, we're just really well surrounded.
You mentioned being based in Europe. You yourself have a European base in Girona, and it's pretty new for you. Tell me about locating and basing yourself in Girona.
I moved in Girona for the second part of last year. I used to be in Nice and then decided to go back to Girona for the service course being here, actually. It's just so convenient. It's small details, but just when something breaks on your bike or you need pieces of equipment, parts, it's much easier than getting stuff shipped and then having to wait a few days, like, or having to wait in a bike shop trying to get your bike sorted out. Maybe like during the pandemic, it could take weeks. So I had to order stuff from the service course and trying to fix it my own way. So yeah, just being over here, great riding and a lot of people to ride with. A lot of the guys from the team are here now. So yeah, being in Girona is really good, and really having a second home here in Europe, I think, is a game changer, to be honest. It has a lot of value. Like if any of the younger riders who wants to make it as professionals in Europe are listening, I think it does have a lot of value to really have a second home over here. You want to be excited about going home in between the races. You don't want it to feel like a burden. Sometimes it's a little more expensive to get a nice place, but honestly, it needs to be your safe place and a place you're looking forward to going back in between the races, because you're supposed to rest and enjoy your time. And it's small details. Just I had my girlfriend over here staying with me for the last 3 months, and now she's gone because she has her own objectives on the track. She's a track cyclist, Lily, so she's back in Milton trying to prep for the World Cup. But yeah, like when she left, I just realized that I've been here for 3 months, and I literally feel like I left a day ago. Like I'm not homesick at all. So it was really a game changer from past year, where after 3 4 5 months you're starting to feel homesick, you're excited to go back for nationals, and then keeps your head a little bit off what's important, the preparation for your bike races. So yeah, small details like that that just makes you happier and makes you really excited to go back home between the races, I think is really important.
You mentioned service course. I almost feel, because it's Girona, I have to clarify. You mean service course like the logistics center for your team, not the sort of, what is it, a cafe, a bike shop? That's also.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's exactly, yeah, or or logistics center, yeah, exactly, with the mechanics and all the bike parts.
Right. There is that other famous service course there. Which also though speaks to the bike culture in Girona. You must run into tons of cyclists all the time.
Yes, and some people don't like that about Girona. I think some Americans from the team, that they don't like running into people they know every single second. You want to go to the grocery store and kind of switch off from cycling. But to be honest, for me, it hasn't been an issue. I think I'm fairly new to the sport and I don't know that many people. So like I'll be running across really good cyclists, but I won't even recognize them. So it's not an issue for me, honestly. So yeah, it's not been an issue for me, but I can understand that some people, being constantly reminded that you're surrounded by pros who are also trying to make it can be a little annoying.
I want to go back to your early roots in cycling. Actually, before cycling, you, like many Canadian kids, you grew up playing hockey. And not surprisingly, there are other Canadian riders who started out on the rink. Is there anything about hockey that helps to build good cyclists? Or is the hockey and cycling connection just from the athleticism that these kids might have, and it's maybe transferable between the sports?
I would say the athleticism for sure. Maybe like some anaerobic power from the hockey ring. I think, yeah. When I started cycling, I was really good anaerobically, probably because the hockey player as I was. But yeah, I think what interested me the most in hockey is what got me into cycling, like the preparation and being fit. I don't think I was a good hockey player. I think I was a good athlete and I could play hockey, but I didn't have the hockey sense and like the raw talent that it takes to be a great hockey player. I was just a good skater, a good shooter. Like I had all the attributes. I was a good athlete, but I wasn't a great hockey player, you know? So, and that got me into cycling because all that preparation you do, eating well, recovering, training, be a good athlete, then I feel like you get rewarded more from it in a sport like cycling than a sport like hockey, where there's so much like hockey sense and talent to it.
I want to talk about another facet. You are studying to be an actuary at the University of Laval. How is it being a full-time bike racer and a student? How do you balance all that stuff?
It's definitely not always easy, but as you mentioned it brings great balance. It's been getting tougher and tougher because I'm over here in Europe more and more, and the program isn't really made to be followed remotely. A lot of classes are supposed to be in presence, but now I'm like a little in too deep. Like I've got, I think, 70 out of 90 credits. Like I'm really close to finishing. So I'm not thinking about stopping. Like if I was really early in the stages of the program, maybe I would think about doing something else that's easier to do remotely, because that's been the like major hiccup is like having classes that you're supposed to be there. And like I understand that what I'm asking is pretty complicated because I'm not supposed to study at Université Laval and be away all the time, but the program and the head of the program has been really great trying to make things easier for me. So yeah, it brings great balance to my life, I think, because there's always something else to rely on. So when cycling is not going my way, then I can throw myself into school and then that's going great. And when school is not going my way, then I can throw myself into cycling and it's going pretty well. So, you know, like especially like I had COVID earlier this year, and I had 10 days off. And honestly, you can easily get into a pretty dark place if you have 10 days off, just thinking about, oh, you're not reaching your objectives and not doing what you should be doing, like all the prep to reach those objectives. And if you have basically nothing else to do, like you have COVID, you're not supposed to go out there, exercise. You're literally just recovering, and it can be quite a while. But then for me, it was also almost like a blessing in disguise because I was quite overwhelmed with school at the time. It was the midterms, and I was like, wow, I've got 10 days to get rid of all the study I have to do, and then I'll be able to go to the races and not stress about it anymore. So what was could have been a very negative experience, while school allowed me to turn it into somewhat something positive. So yeah, I think it's a great example of like how it brings a good balance to my life.
An actuary studies and manages risk in financial situation. There's risk in cycling, especially I think in a sprint. Also, you have to gauge, say, the risk of letting a rider go up the road or to chase that rider down. Tell me about your relationship with risk.
You know, that's quite funny because, well, I'll start with numbers, to be honest, because like an actuary plays a lot with numbers, and I like relying on being natural on the bike and your feeling. So that's like a big difference. I think like I'm really number oriented when I'm off the bike with all the statistics and the actuarial stuff, but then on the bike, of course, like I'm using power meter and analyzing all the data, but I also like want to rely on how you feel. And as far as risk goes, yeah, the guys think I'm pretty funny sometimes when I start babbling about all the risk and what is the likeliness of this scenario to happen or the other scenario. But I think, yeah, when you're on the bike, maybe I don't quite realize it that I'm computing all these risks, but it just feels natural, you know like the patterns and everything, and you try to rely on other people's experience as well. That's why you have the directors. So yeah, I don't think I like recall any time that I really like used any statistical knowledge to analyze any situation, but I think, yeah, I probably have like a mind that's oriented towards that, so I don't realize it, but I'm using it more than I think, I'm sure.
What's the riskiest move you've made in a race? Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be dangerous, but like where it was a calculated risk.
Um, it's hard to single out on one move, but as you said, like it's calculated. It's going to be a great like risk reward ratio, and I actually have trouble to take risk earlier in the race, like to get in the breakaway and stuff like that. When you really have to be in the breakaway, then it's a little easier. But then, yeah, the first 100K of a race, when you're saving energy and everyone's trying to be chill, trying to eat and everything, I tend to have a little more trouble to defend my position and take the risk needed to save that energy. But then once you start sniffing the finish line and you get close and it actually matters, then for sure you start to take a lot more risk. And I think, yeah, I can't narrow it down to like one situation, but I would say that when I do take the most risk is when there's either like a very hard section that you can't come back from. Like my example would be Paris Tours, 50K to go, you get into a dirt section, and then it's 18 dirt sections in the next 40K, and like it's one after the other. So if you're not in position for the first one, there's not going to be a reshuffle. It's just going to go like people are going to get spat out the back from that point, but you're not going to move up anymore. So basically you get to that 50K mark point with 50K to go, and you either get to the front or you're not in the race anymore. So of course, like your willingness to take risk gets a lot higher, basically, because if you're not taking these risks and if you're not at the front, then your race is over anyway. So it's a little more rewarding for sure. So you're taking more risk.
I find it interesting that you say you like to sort of ride by feel or ride by intuition, which, to be honest, once I found out that you were, studying math and statistics or using those in your studies, I was like, oh, this must be a numbers guy. He must be like watching his power data and his head unit. But do you kind of, let the screen go dark on your head unit when you're out riding?
No. I do look at it, but it's also like you have to adapt because as a pro, you're going to ride multiple bikes with multiple different power meters, and they're great. They're great tools, but they're accurate in relation to themselves, right? So from one power meter to another, you might have 2%. So if one of your power meters is 2% high and then one of them is 2% low, a 4% spread when you know yourself as much as we do is a very big spread. It's the difference between being on a great day where you're flying and on a day where you think you might be getting sick. So at some point, you got to kind of feel how you're feeling. It could be easy to like just bang your head against the wall, thinking that the numbers are not what they should be. But it could also be just your parameter doing weird stuff on that day. So like, yeah, in the last year, I've been working a lot on just doing my efforts that my coach is asking me to do. And if the parameter is saying 20, 40 watts lower than what I should be doing, I'm not going to go back home and just throw the training away, because I could be wasting a great day that's just influenced by the power meters reading, right? So just going to go all out for whatever effort, or not all out, like the intensity that I'm supposed to do, and whatever it says, then it says it, and then we can assess. But if I feel good and the numbers are just low, then I'm not going to like stop riding and wonder what the problem is, right? So yeah, I think you've got to find the balance between analyzing post ride and using these numbers, but also not go crazy while you're on the bike.
Is there any technical element in cycling that you're working on right now? Like maybe something in your sprint, or maybe it's your time trial position? Is there any technique that you're trying to improve upon?
Last year, I started working on my time trial again, to be honest. As a junior, I was a very good time trialist. And then when I got on silver, we had a bunch of very good time trialists. So there wasn't a lot of space in that area. And I turned more into a sprinter. So all the time that I would take to do the time trial trainings turned into motor pacing and sprint. And last year, I tried to become more of a complete rider and worked on my TT, got some good results. And this year, I haven't done any TT yet, but my prep is going to start soon for nationals because that is going to be an objective of mine. So just, trying to get into the tech, the position, and obviously just spend a lot of time on the bike to get used to that position and get comfortable into it. So that's probably going to be the focus, for the next couple of months before nationals.
You mentioned nationals, but what else is next for you in the season ahead?
To be honest, it's quite unclear. So I don't have much to say about it. Like I can say what I'm immediately going to do. Like I'm going to go to Giro di Sicilia and then Tour of Greece. But then, afterwards, I did, like, except from nationals, then like we have a rough plan, but who's going where is not yet decided.
Is it so open because just that's the nature of racing nowadays? Because of the past 2 years of the pandemic, things are just always in flux?
Yeah, a little bit. And, as a pro Conti team, you're always kind of waiting on race invites and everything. So not everything is set in stone, like ahead a lot. And with all the illnesses and everything, you end up like spending a lot of time making plans and then you have to change everything. So yeah, we have a rough idea of what I'm probably gonna do, but still like I could be racing Swiss before nationals, which seems unlikely to me, but it could happen also. Like so yeah, in the last 2 years we've got to adapt. But it's great because you get like a lot of racing days and I'm not like a Grand Tour rider who's going to train for 4 months and not race and just like prep massively for that one event. Like I'm more of an opportunistic rider. So I just want to get like a lot of shot at it and I'm just going to race aggressively and try to make the most out of like every single race day, basically, no matter what the race is.
Well, I hope those opportunities present themselves this year, wherever they may be, whether more races in Europe or maybe back in North America. But Pier-André, thank you very much for speaking with me today.
Well, thanks a lot. It was a pleasure.
And that's the interview. If you're a sharp-eared listener, you will have noticed in the interview that Côté said he was planning to do the Giro di Sicilia. But that race is on right now. This interview was recorded almost a week before the Giro. And what's cool is that Côté had a really strong performance in the first stage, finishing 8th.
375 meter nog. 350 meter op dit moment met nog steeds Steve Bauer aan de leiding. Fondriest en Criquillon.
At the start of this episode, I mentioned that there is a Criquillon/Canadian connection. In 1988, Maurizio Fondriest, Claude Criquillon, and Steve Bauer from Fenwick, Ontario, came to the closing meters of the World Championship road race. Bauer launched a sprint. Criquillon tried to come between Bauer and the barriers. Criquillon crashed. Fondriest won. Bauer crossed the line in second, but was disqualified for actions deliberately unsportsmanlike and dangerous, according to the judges. The debate still continues about who was at fault. Some say Bauer was reckless, sticking out his elbow, causing Criquillon to crash. Others say Criquillon hit Bauer first, and the Canadian's elbow came out so he could maintain his balance. After the race, police had to guard Bauer's home in Belgium. He had received threats from supporters of Criquillon. Criquillon later sued Bauer for assault and $1.5 million in damages. Roughly 3.5 years after the race, a judge did not rule in favor of the Belgian rider. Claude Criquelion won his national championship road race in 1990, the Tour of Flanders in 1987, and the World Championships in 1984. He died February 18, 2015. The race that Pier-André Côté won in March, the Grand Prix Criquelion, was first run in 1995 in honor of the Belgian racer. This episode of the Canadian Cycling Magazine podcast was written and edited by me, Matthew Piero. I had help from web editors Matt Hansen and Terry McCall. It is produced by Adam Killick. He composed the music too. Thanks to Ontario Creates for its support. And thank you for listening. Please rate and review the show, ride safely, and I'll talk to you later.